And you are live.
In the flesh. All right, Superintendent, you happy? Ready to go?
We are ready.
All right. Hearing no objections from the board members either. Oh, yes, and Dr. Gonzalez is here. So we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. It's February 17th, 5:31. This is a regular meeting of the Santa Fe Public Schools Board of Education. It looks like we have in attendance Secretary Sarah Bose, Dr. Carmen Gonzalez, Board Member Sasha Anderson, and I do not see Vice President Garcia at this time. So we have 4 board members and we do have a quorum. We will start as ever with the Pledge of Allegiance and salute to the New Mexico flag in English and in Spanish, followed by the acknowledgement of tribal land. Does anyone want to lead the pledge and the salute?
I'm happy to do that, Madam President, if you'd like.
Thank you. Secretary Bose, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Juro fidelidad a la bandera de los Estados Unidos de América y a la república que representa una nación bajo Dios, indivisible, con libertad y justicia para todos. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, the Zia symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures. Saludo la bandera del Estado de Nuevo México, el símbolo Zia de amistad perfecta entre culturas unidas.
Thank you very much. Do you want to continue with the acknowledgement of tribal land?
Absolutely. We acknowledge that our Board of Education meeting is taking place on occupied Indigenous land. We acknowledge the Tesuque Pueblo lands and other tribal lands on which we stand. We honor these people, past, present, and future. We acknowledge the history and ongoing colonization of where we are sitting right now in New Mexico and in our country. We acknowledge our own place in the story of colonization.
Thank you, Secretary Bose. I love that new version. Thank you, Board Member Anderson. On to approval of the agenda. Superintendent, do you want any changes?
No changes this evening, Board President Noble.
Thank you. And if the board,
Madam
Awesome.
President, I move to approve the agenda.
thank you, Secretary
Second,
Bose. Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. We'll go ahead and do a roll call vote on approving our agenda for tonight. Secretary Bose,
Yes.
Dr. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
and the president also votes yes. Please approve the agenda. Now, Roman numeral 2, introduction of interpreter. Superintendent.
Thank you, Board President Noble. Deputy Superintendent Romero.
Servicio de Traducción en Español, marque 206-451-6064. A continuación, 701-802-5152. Y el número de acceso es 4277-932 #. Y por favor, mantenga su teléfono en silencio durante la traducción.
Thank you very much. Moving swiftly along to Roman numeral 3 on our agenda, public forum. Superintendent.
Thank you, Board President Noble, members of the board. Mr. Donarski, our Public Information Officer, will take us through public forum tonight.
Good evening, Board President, members of the board, Superintendent Chavez. There are 10 people signed up for public comment tonight, 2 of which will speak live. Rules for public forum. Public forum includes online and or virtual participation as needed, as well as in-person comments when the board holds in-person meetings. Please listen and speak with respect. No uncivil conduct will be permitted. Please do not discuss any specific student who is not your own. There will be no sharing of time. Self-monitor and observe the 3-minute time limit. I will give you a 30-second warning when your time is almost up. Public commentary and dialogue are not allowed or are allowed only during public forum, not throughout the meeting. Please search for answers on common ground. You may speak on any topic, whether it is on the agenda or not. Your input will be taken into consideration. Please be advised that the board may discuss your issue during the meeting, but by law, the board cannot take action on items that are not on the agenda. Please do not discuss employee matters which may result in disciplinary actions. Instead, notify the employee supervisor, the Human Resources Department, or the superintendent. So we will start with the people who are speaking live tonight. The only one that are in the list of attendees is Meg Sterling. So Meg, where'd you go? I am allowing you to talk. Meg, you should be able to speak now.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Okay. You know what? I actually just meant to send in an email. I wasn't trying to attend as a speaker, but I'm happy to. I just was curious to hear what the board was going to discuss tonight in regards to masking in schools in light of the governor's new mandates. And I simply sent in a couple sentence email today, which I thought was going to be read instead of speaking live, just saying my personal opinion would be that I would like for it to be optional for families so that people can make the masking choice that works best for them. And that was it.
Thank you. And Megan, I apologize. When I read your email, I took it as that you wanted to speak live tonight. So I apologize for the confusion.
It's totally fine. I'm in my car driving my kid to soccer. Don't worry about it. I appreciate everything y'all are doing. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Awesome. So I do not see anyone else, the names of those who were signed up for public forum. I will say if they are in the attendees, please email that public forum email address and let me know that you are on, so that way I can make sure that you're able to speak. But in the meantime, I will read the comments that are submitted. First comment is from Andrew Norton. When the state of New Mexico removes indoor COVID-19 mask mandates, what are the plans of the board at that time? Next comment is from Ann Lilly. I'm asking the board to allow parents to make informed decisions regarding whether or not they want their child to wear a mask at school. We have the information and it's time to allow parents to decide what's best for their children. Next is Jenna Locke. Hello, board members. Given the governor's newly lifted state mask mandate, I am wondering what criteria is needed for SFPS to consider doing the same in our schools. Thank you so much for your time. This one is from Sharada Hall. Greetings. How fortuitous that there's a meeting tonight on the heels of the governor's announcement to lift the indoor mask mandate. As an SFPS parent, I'm strongly urging Superintendent Chavez and the board to act in accordance with the governor's orders, as they have all along these past 2 years, and finally give back to the kids their chance to see one another, enjoy their school life, and breathe freely. After all that the kids have been through, it is time to give them something to be happy about. I trust you will do the right thing and lift the mask mandate for all school children. Thank you. This one is from Martha Jackson. I would like to ask when board meetings will be held in person again. As COVID cases ebb, I am hopeful that we can return to in-person meetings, which will facilitate the feeling of community and collaboration so much more than online meetings. In the same vein, I ask for a sense of urgency in addressing returning our students' lives to as many pre-pandemic conditions as possible. Our kids need normalcy. Let kids use their lockers again. Let kids use water fountains again. Let parents decide if their kids should wear masks. Let them sit together at lunch outdoors. Kids have paid the highest price for the pandemic. Now let them enjoy the benefits of decreasing cases like the rest of society. Let kids be kids. Before I get to the last comments, I would just like to say if there is anyone in the attendees who did sign up for public forum that I sent the link to, if I'm not seeing your name, I'm not sure if you're here to do public comments. So please reach out to public_forum@sfps.info and let me know that you are in the attendees. This one is from Kate Erda Smith. Good afternoon, members of the school board. It is with great excitement that I learned of Governor Lujan Grisham's announcement to lift the state's mask mandate for the majority of settings effective immediately. As a parent of 2 school-aged children, a middle schooler and a high schooler, and someone who has followed all of the state rules over the last 2 years of this pandemic, I have great hopes that this school district, the one to which you have been elected to represent, will follow her educated and thoughtful lead and do the same. Or, as she alluded to in the news, make this a parent/family choice. As I watch state governments and local municipalities across the country lift their mask mandates, including those for school-age children, I believe that they have taken all scientific and mental behavioral information into account. I have watched, both as a mother and a full-time working parent, my children, their friends, as they had to acclimate themselves to remote learning, then hybrid learning, then in school but fully masked days. They have persevered because we asked them to and because they want to, but this has gone on for long enough. This is not going away. COVID isn't totally, but at some point we need an end game. What better end game than this for our kids? I hope you will give us the choice to wear masks and not wear masks. My family and I will respect the decisions of others, and I hope that others would respect ours. It is finally time to not wear masks. It is time to be in school, unfettered, collaborating, and learning. The next comment is from Mark Gordon. Hello, SFPS board. In light of today's decision by the governor to end the indoor mask mandate, and in keeping with other school districts such as APS and Rio Rancho, I would urge you to make indoor masks for students and staff optional, effective immediately. This has been a long time coming, and those who have so far chosen to not get vaccinated can always keep their mask on. The last comment is from Allison Keyser. I'm writing to express my strong desire for masks to be lifted or optional for the students. Now, there was one other person who was signed up to speak at public forum, but I do not see their name in the attendees. I can read the comment if you would like, just to make sure that it was addressed, and we can move forward from there. So they said, good morning, members of the board. I would like to request the opportunity to address the board in the upcoming meeting on February 17th, 2022. I would like to bring up issues with the Mandela lottery process. Thank you. That is from Inga Hendrickson. So I do not see Inga Hendrickson in the attendees. So I will not be choosing on there. And that ends public forum.
Thank you very much, Mr. Janarski. Appreciate you navigating that. And Superintendent, thank you very much for all you and your team did to get us our first live public comment in a while, even if she was just emailing. All right, moving along on our agenda, we arrive at Roman numeral 4, the union update. I did get a text from Grace Mayer, president of NEA Santa Fe, that she would not be attending and there would be no union update from her.
Madam President, this is Rudy. I just want you to know that I'm here.
Thank you, Vice President Garcia. Nice to see you. And yes, let's note that Vice President Garcia did come in during the public forum section of the agenda. Okay, off we go to Roman numeral 5 on our agenda, which is board announcements and follow-up. We start with CRC committee update, which is redundant, but Secretary Bose or Board Member Anderson, do you want to give us an update from the CRC?
Madam President, I'm happy to go, but unless Board Member Anderson would like to speak instead.
Secretary Jose, you go, go right ahead.
Okay. Well, we had a very quick meeting last week, primarily focused around a new position that they've hired someone that's going to help. I think we're all aware of the cost increases that have occurred over the last year and a half or 2 years. And so they have brought someone on board that's going to help kind of manage cost effectiveness for building projects. And some of the projects that they had on the plan last year have had to be put on hold due to cost changes. And so, they're giving some really good attention to that. And it was a very helpful presentation. And I'm glad that the district is being, prudent and responsible with our taxpayers' dollars. So do you have anything else to add to that, Board Member Anderson?
I don't. Thank you so much.
Okay, that's all. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Secretary Bazay. And I can do an audit committee update, as I know Dr. Carmen Gonzalez was deep in the machinations of the legislature at the time.
Thank you.
Supposed to wrap up at noon. And Superintendent can help me if I miss, but the committee had elected a new chair, Denise Rippmund, and she seems great and really ready to steward a sort of upgrade of the committee. We heard from the auditor a little refresher on the role of the audit committee, and talked about that and how things can just get better and better in terms of the oversight and use of the audit committee. So it was a discussion I very much appreciated having, and I think that can be very valuable for the board as we think through how to use that committee as we enter our first budget session together, and think about the other part of the auditor's presentation was about a finance committee, which this board has always had as just a meeting of the board. We are, in other words, the finance subcommittee. So it was great to sort of think about how all of this can support the superintendent as he evolves in his role and moves the district along. And anyway, it was kind of profound and I liked it. And we have a good new chair. I think that's about the headlines from that meeting. Superintendent, do you want to add anything?
No, I think you covered it, other than we do have an onboarding with her tomorrow. So, we're looking forward to meeting with her and really talking about the agenda, what it looks like, and some of the protocols that will take place during the committee.
Yeah. Any other updates from the board? Board updates and follow-up. I feel like everybody's just been sprinting to the end. Yes, Dr. Gonzalez.
Well, I think we got some good things passed for teachers and for the future of our teachers. We got the 3-tier licensure passed. We also got that you can come back after 90 days, which I know that the superintendent was really anxious about. You can come back after 90 days and you can get your retirement and teach for up to 36 months or 3 years and still get your retirement. So that I would think that might bring some teachers back. So I was excited about those 2 things. And there's a lot more that happened during the session. Those 2, I think, will really help us.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. Yeah.
Oh, and then there was one other one that's also going to be very useful is the scholarship, the Opportunity Scholarship, which is going to combine all the different kinds of scholarships, the lottery and different ones into one scholarship. And it will be you can go for 6 months. 6 hours. It used to be a lot of those scholarships, you had to be a full-time student. And we know a lot of students can't go full-time. So that's a really good thing too. And I'm kind of tired. Oh, and one other thing. I became a grandma.
Good update. Oh my goodness.
Last Friday. And we got to meet her on Sunday. Her name is Renata Scott.
Lovely. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Madam President,
Yes, Vice President Garcia.
congratulations, board member. That's awesome. That's great. Can we get an update from our lobbyist as into what happened regarding capital outlay at our next meeting, or can the superintendent give us what they passed in regards to projects?
Yeah, we talked about that actually at our last board meeting, and the superintendent, I think, is going to talk with Linda Siegel, our lobbyist, and figure out when is the best time and if we should wait for the governor's signing period to be over, or if we can do, I mean, there's obviously so much to say, Superintendent, we could also do it in 2 chunks. There's a lot to digest and a lot moved in education, as Dr. Gonzalez said. But yes, thank you, Vice President Garcia. That is, I think, in the plans.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Gonzalez.
I think it would be good to wait until after she signed them, but the ones that I talked to you about earlier were all on her agenda, so she will definitely sign those things.
Right, yeah. Thank you. And congratulations. We hope you and everybody else who was sprinting to the end of the legislative session can get a little rest now. There's this characteristic of people who've been working dozens and dozens of hours each day in a row and all sorts of other crazy things in the reality show that we like to call our legislative session. Sorry, that's my own comedy bit about our system. Okay, anything else on board announcements and follow-up? All right. Oh, yes, go ahead, Board Member Anderson.
I just thank you, Board President Noble, members of the board and superintendent. I just wanted to say that I'm thrilled that the new social studies standards are being adopted. I've read them. They are fantastic. They make me really excited as a parent that my kid's going to be able to take part in this. So I just wanted to note that I'm really thrilled that that happened.
Excellent. See, these are all good, such good updates. We need a robust board announcement and update section. Okay, anything else? Other board announcements and updates?
Madam President, I am guessing that the superintendent is going to mention this in his updates, but on the off chance, or even better to do it twice, wanted to recognize Miss Hope Cahill, the Eldorado teacher the incredible Eldorado science teacher who won that really prestigious presidential award this week. So huge kudos. I know her and students that have taken her class, and she's just a phenomenal person. I'm glad she received that recognition. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, board announcements and follow-up going once, going twice. Moving on to superintendent announcements and follow-up. Mr. Chavez.
Thank you, Board President Noble, members of the board, and Secretary Bozay. That's my first announcement, so hopefully I keep the momentum rolling. I actually went out to congratulate her myself and surprised her. After I spoke to her and congratulated her, I received an email that she was shocked I was there, and she apologized for not introducing me to her class because I just surprised her. So again, we want to congratulate Hope Cahill for receiving the highest U.S. award for math and science teaching. I'm excited that Hope Cahill is an employee of Santa Fe Public Schools, and as you mentioned, she teaches 6th and 7th grade at Eldorado Community School. She has received this Presidential Award for Excellence in Math and Science from the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy and the National Science, or the NSF. This honor recognizes her excellence in teaching and being a top educator and incredible role model for teachers and students. She believes in strong inquiry and place-based education and endeavors to present students with new lens to view and interpret the world around them. Ms. Cahill has developed also curriculum for that same foundation, and it is scheduled to be published in the Earth Scientist, a quarterly journal of the National Earth Science Teachers Association. So we'll make sure once that's published, we get that out to everyone. A virtual ceremony will be held later this month to allow all award winners to participate. Each awardee will receive a certificate signed by President Biden, a $10,000 award from the National Science Foundation, and awardees will also travel to Washington, D.C. for an award ceremony at a future date. So again, we want to congratulate Hope Cahill and really tell her thank you for everything you do. Now, piggybacking off of Dr. Gonzalez's legislative updates with this year's session over, and again, the dust is starting to settle. We want to thank first the legislature, our delegation, and the governor for responding to our statewide staffing shortage with a much needed and welcome investment in staff salaries. Though the governor has until March 9th to act on the General Appropriations Act, House Bill 2, it appears that this school year, all Santa Fe public school employees will receive a 3% raise. So let me just say that again. This fiscal year, this school year, House Bill 2 does recognize that all employees district-wide will receive a 3% raise. We're also excited about and appreciate the approval of Senate Bill 1. Senate Bill 1, starting next school year, raises the state minimum salaries for level 1 teachers who will earn a minimum, and that's key, the minimum of $50,000, a level 2 teacher, a minimum of $60,000, and a level 3 teacher, a minimum of $70,000. So really big jumps. Also, no full-time school principal or assistant principal will receive a base salary of less than $70,000. Again, there are other factors that go into the steps, and so those are just the base minimums. Mr. Martinez, myself, and the team have a lot of work ahead of us to really figure out what the new pay tables are going to look like. Again, in 2022-23, House Bill 2 includes an average raise of 4%. Again, due to the average language, some employees could see 6%, 7%, some could also reach the teens. So again, covering these variances so employees can see these increases will require us to make some difficult decisions. Again, we've done it before, we'll do it again. We'll use many tools, including reviewing our cash balance, eliminating vacancies, limiting outside contracts, and just taking a deep dive into our numbers. Again, in collaboration with the board, we promise to deliver a balanced budget that will be responsive to the district's needs and fiscal responsibility and further equity. Now my COVID updates. I know we could have gone in deeper on that one, but my COVID updates, as of today, as many of you know, the governor lifted the mask mandate effective immediately. Many districts have already made an announcement about the mask mandate. We have put out information to our school community that the team and I would start talking about our message tomorrow. Tomorrow, we do not have students in school. It is parent-teacher conferences, and then Monday is a holiday. And so we want to update our community prior to Tuesday when students return. Also, we are currently moving through our vaccination clinics. We've had already 3 vaccination clinics on site this week. At one of the sites, we've had 12 COVID shots, 5 flu shots. At another site, we've had 2 COVID shots, 4 flu shots. And earlier today, we were up close to 10 COVID shots with an additional 2 or 3 flu shots. So again, we'll continue to offer these at every single site across the district. And then we will follow up with a second dose of vaccine clinics early spring, just to follow up with the second dose of COVID and also any shots that may be needed for next school year. So we're moving right along. The Scripps National Spelling Bee winners. Congratulations to the Scripps National Spelling Bee winner. Taking first place was Camilla Cerrone from Santa Fe Prep School. Taking second place was Amaya Cerrone from Carlos Gilbert Elementary. And we also had 2 state qualifiers, Alice Marshall and Valentina Hussey from Mandala International Magnet School. All 4 students will advance to the state competition in Albuquerque in March. We also had 4, this is very exciting news. I kind of had mentioned it to President Noble earlier this week. 4 students from Early College Opportunities High School, or better known as ECO, attended an orientation, a human resources orientation on Tuesday for a mechanic helper position. So another internal internship that we are offering some of our students. Student mechanic helpers will perform tasks maintaining and repairing district buses, under direct supervision of our shop foreman. All students are enrolled at ECO in auto tech courses and have set goals to advance their skills for future work in the industry. The position is part-time with students working after-school hours for approximately 10 hours a week. Starting pay is $14 an hour. We continue to accept applications for the position and plan to employ as many as 8 students as mechanic helpers. And we are generating a lot of interest. And last is Board Member Anderson's update. The PED has officially adopted a role replacing the state's new K-12 social studies standards, and the district will need to implement the standards during the 23-24 school year. So that gives us a year of planning. And President Noble, that concludes my superintendent's updates.
Thank you, Superintendent. Board members, any questions on the superintendent's updates? Obviously, he blazed through that, including the very important COVID updates. Yes, Secretary Bozay.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Chavez. In light of the governor's lifting the mask mandate and hearing some of our public forum comments tonight, I'm wondering if there would be the opportunity to perhaps send out a survey to members of our community, our school communities over the weekend, just to get a sense of where everyone is feeling and doing about this issue. I think, you know, what we heard tonight is that lots of people feel like it's a personal choice, and that is certainly a valid perspective. But we also know that we have many people who live in families with children under 5 where they're not old enough to be vaccinated yet, or perhaps live with immunocompromised people or who are otherwise, you know, at risk still from COVID being brought home. And yes, masks one way do offer protection, but we know that it's better, you know, there's more protection if there's everyone wearing masks. So I just, you know, I want the most vulnerable people to also feel comfortable and safe in schools. And I think it would be a good opportunity to kind of put it out to the community and see how people are feeling. So I just wanted to put that out there and see if that would be a possibility. Thank you.
Dr. Gonzalez.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Chavez, I have some concerns about it, you know, of sort of a mixed, some kids wearing masks and some not. I think, you know, there can be bullying and a lot of that going on. And so I have some concern about that. And I also understand people being very frustrated with having to wear masks. We had to wear masks the whole time in the legislature, and it's not fun. So I do think we need to be thoughtful about it, though. Thank you.
I guess I'll chime in and say I sort of love Secretary Bozay's idea of a survey because in part, I think we really do want to hear from our community on this, and I would like us to level the playing field as much as possible, and not just make it, you know, those who decide to speak up, but sort of actively seek the views of those who might not be inclined to speak up unless asked. I think, you know, whatever we need to do around making, and I'd love to know where we are as a community in aggregate. You know, my great hope, and I realize a lot of my focus through this has been that we hold together as a community, that we figure out how to enhance our humanity and connection and understanding, knowing that there will be lots of strongly held views and feelings on this. You know, there are medical experts in our community. Of course, there's lots of school districts. There are city and county partners. There's the early childhood community, as Secretary Bozay mentioned. And I think, you know, we really have to figure out a way to move through this together. And my hope is to really work hard on that and not become more divided. You know, everybody's raw and COVID's wild. And I think, you know, I guess as I imagine this, I can see, text message surveys that are fairly simple on like, do you support X, Y, or Z? Yes, no, and in what time period? Or, and what is the Santa Fe Public School staff, who obviously are a key constituency in how this rolls, and students and families who are a key constituency in how this rolls, and maybe we invite in the whole community and look for partnership on a flash survey or something, because Superintendent, I think you're right that the information does also, there needs to be something clear before kids go back in buildings on Tuesday. So obviously, in a way, if there's going to be a sudden lifting of a mask mandate, it is nice to have the cushion of not of a couple days without students in schools. And Superintendent, I appreciate your consideration, and I know that this is not a decision that you'll make quickly or lightly, and I think your approach has been demonstrated to be very considered, and I think this needs that, and it would be great to hear from our community sort of in mass, in aggregate. So thank you, Secretary Bose. I love that. And Superintendent, if it's all right, we'll come to you in a moment, but
yeah,
I'll go to Board Member Anderson first.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, and Superintendent Chavez. I'm just jumping on the bandwagon. I think this is a great idea. I just wanted to add one thing, and I also want to second particularly President Noble's mention of staff, because I know those are the folks who are truly on the front lines, will have to be enforcing things, and also are exposed to so many folks and need to have a voice in what they're exposed to. The other thing that I wanted to bring up, when SFPS, prior to my being on the board, had done the survey about returning to school or the remote option, there were really big differences in class and geography for the responses. I know we have just a few days, and it's putting a lot on you, but it would be really interesting to see how those kind of roll out. We know that, for example, 87507 is a population much more at risk. So it would be interesting to see responses based on school to kind of see where folks who have higher risk are leaning and where folks who have lower risk are leaning. I think that would be a really interesting is probably not the word, but maybe critical thing to see as you move forward.
Thank you, Board Member Anderson. Superintendent, do you want to comment?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. The team and I, we've already scheduled a meeting for tomorrow. So what we can do is really shift what that agenda would look like and point it towards developing a survey and getting that out quickly. We do have partners with Santa Fe Community College that help us develop and aggregate the data, so we can call on them to partner with us. And I think it is a good idea to really listen to the community, get some input, get some feedback. And I also like the suggestion of looking at the pockets and seeing where that data is coming from. So definitely we'll jump on that tomorrow morning, and then try to get that out as soon as possible so we can give our community plenty of time to respond. And then we'll get that out in multiple venues, social media, posting it, the text remind so they can click on the link in different ways.
Vice President Garcia.
I think the survey is an excellent idea. So where are we at with children that are going to school tomorrow? Do you have to wear a mask at school or you don't? That's one of the questions all the parents are going to ask. I've already gotten tons of calls on that. APS just lifted their mask mandate. And so whenever we do the survey, the outcomes of the survey, where are we going? What are we going to do? And what kids tomorrow, are they showing up with a mask or not?
No, tomorrow is parent-teacher conference. Parent-teacher conference. So students are not in attendance tomorrow or Monday. So we've kind of been lucky with the announcement that we have a couple of days with students not in school. And so we'll take full advantage of that opportunity to allow our community to reply back to the survey.
So us as policymakers or the superintendent's recommendation, what about games? If there's games this weekend, are they going to wear masks? They don't have to, they do.
For me, that's still, my announcement to staff today was as is until an update comes out. And part of the update now is going to be the response from the survey. So we're going to remain as is until we can make a decision based off the input or the feedback from our community.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Vice President Garcia. Secretary Boze.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Chavez. Just to follow up briefly, that I think whatever the decision is made from this, I think that it would be good to have some guidelines in place. And I'm kind of surprised and disappointed that that didn't come with the governor's orders. I think we know that when things get relaxed or rolled back, like if we have another surge like we saw in the last month, that they're very well, the pandemic isn't over. And so this all seems a little odd to me. But if there is high levels of community spread happening again, that there might be instances where masks are important. And so I think kind of the approach, and it's strange, again, the CDC still recommends masks indoors for kids in schools. So I think that having some framework for this is when we can take masks off, and if we get back to this place, then maybe masks have to go back on until we reach this threshold again. So I think maybe that would be something also that we could relay to the community to give them some reassurance that we're not looking at a forever situation or a never again situation. It's fluid depending on what's happening in the community. And I think that really is kind of what being led by the science means, that we recognize that there are factors at play, and we want to do what we can to keep people safe when they need it and functioning and free. We're all tired of masks. Like I 100% completely understand it. So that's just another opinion about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Boze.
So, Madam President,
Go ahead.
if the superintendent could actually explain to us how the survey is going to be conducted. Are you going to mail something out? Is it text? Is it, because not everybody, my grandma doesn't have a cell phone.
Yeah,
So
I think
how are you guys going to do that?
it's going to be everything that you've mentioned. We'll try to get that out through text, through posted on our social media accounts, our websites. We'll leave it up and we'll have it available in different areas on our school website. And like I said, social media, through text. We'll send out some information on how to access it or where to find it, so people have the information at hand to really try to submit their response to the survey.
Thank you. And so you have the capabilities from staff to do this survey?
We do.
So I would like to, not tonight, but just to keep in mind, we need some guidelines as to what, if the survey says yes or no, where are we going to go, right? We don't have to answer that tonight, but just be prepared for that so we know where we're at. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Vice President. Anything else on this or any other superintendent updates?
That's all my updates.
Thank you. Going once, going twice. Okay, moving along to our presentation on the Life Project curriculum. Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Board President Noble. With us tonight is Ms. Crystal Ibarra. Ms. Crystal Ibarra worked with a group out at Capitol High, bringing different community groups and committees together to start discussing what something we can present to our students would look like as far as a project addressing real life situations. So let me introduce you to Ms. Crystal Ibarra.
Good evening, Board President, members of the board, Superintendent. We actually had a meeting just before break over at Capitol High School to discuss a number of issues that have come up with our teenage population on campus. During this time, the district attorney's office did in fact say that they've been working on a program for quite some time, thinking through how they might present certain tough subjects to this population. And so they actually, I believe, sent the request to our superintendent and to you, President Noble, asking if they could have the opportunity to discuss their thoughts around that. So this evening, we do have Francesca Purdue, Billy Purdue, and I believe one of the district attorney is here. I don't see his name, but Francesca, I would like to go ahead and hand that over to you.
And I just want to welcome Madam District Attorney Mary Carmack Always. Thanks for being here. And welcome Ms. Purdue, please.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam President, Superintendent Chavez, members of the board. Thank you for having us here tonight. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to District Attorney Mary Carmack Always so she can give you a little background on what we've been working on, and then I will go into detail as far as what it is.
Excellent. Welcome, Madam District Attorney.
Hello, Madam President. Thank you very much, members of the board. I'm having endless computer problems today, so I hope you all can hear me. I'm signed on in about 3 different ways because everything keeps freezing. I asked for the opportunity to have 2 of my staff members present this project that they've been working on for about 3 months now, putting together a curriculum to be presented at both Capitol and Santa Fe High. Really about common themes and issues in the criminal justice system, in particular that relate to teens and youth. I'm sure you all know there's been kind of an uptick in some gang activity and violence, particularly around Capitol High School, but we are seeing it at Santa Fe as well. And so it's really their brainchild, but this was our idea to try to combat that and to have conversations with the teens and figure out what it is that that they think is missing from their lives and their curriculum, and how we can help. And so we have created this. I'm going to turn it over to Francesca Purdue and actually Billy Purdue. We call them the Purduo. Billy is a former SFPD officer. He's an investigator with our office now. He's been there for, I don't actually know, 6 or 7 years. And he's really, he's a baseball coach. He's an integral member of this community. And so we're very lucky to have him on staff. Francesca is our new PIO and also our data analyst. And so she and Billy have put this over and put this together, and I'm going to turn it over to them. So thank you very much for allowing us to present tonight.
Thank you, DA. I will turn it over to Billy really quick. If he could give us some feedback on what he had been seeing. I've only been in the office for the last about 6-7 months now. He really has a better understanding of what was actually happening in the schools and how we got brought into Capitol High School. So I'll turn that over to him to give you all a better understanding of what he was seeing and why we felt this program was necessary.
Good evening, members of the board, Madam President. Thank you for the time. So just to give a little bit of background, through our office, summer of 2021, DA Carmack Always asked us to kind of start looking into what was going on in the community. We began to kind of see the trends going on with what's going on in the schools and amongst our youth. So as we kind of kept an eye on it, the local agencies were handling everything that was going on. So in the background, we were kind of trying to figure out how we could get involved and how we can try and make a difference. Initially, it came about with the idea from District Attorney Carmack Always, where she spoke with the Clovis District Attorney. And we were initially going to bring a program targeted at one specific subject. And we ultimately thought, well, with everything that's going on, can we just target the overall population of the school and present some ideas to the school and interact with the students to not only target the gang violence and the youth violence problem, but target just the youth in general and to bring some ideas and some understanding of how the criminal justice system works and how we can, I guess, step in and mentor our youth is kind of our idea and our goal to achieve with this program as we present it out. And as I'm pretty sure most of you guys are aware with a lot of the stuff that's going on within the community, one of our subjects within our presentation will kind of target the gang and gun violence as well. So instead of just kind of focusing on one thing, we'll give ourselves an opportunity to reach out to the youth in general.
Thank you. Going a little more in depth into the actual curriculum, we created it and we called it the Life Project, educating students that life today affects life tomorrow. And that's going to be what we're calling it and how we're wording it. So we have created it to be an 8-week course, presenting one subject a week at both high schools. We've already met with the principals of each location, and we are going to leave the scheduling to them and where they think we fit into this. But as far as the curriculum, week 1, and before the curriculum even starts, what our plan is we want to actually go into the schools, and we've requested that they identify the ambassadors or the students of the school that represent each student body, that it's accumulative there. And we want to talk to the members first. We want to get feedback from the students to see what it is they actually need from us. We understand that, nowadays, COVID, social media, they are dealing with things that none of us here probably never dealt with. And we want to make sure that we're getting feedback from them to make sure that we're teaching them things that they can't learn in a textbook, that they're not going to learn from their core curriculum, and really just give them those answers in hopes that they don't have to go searching for it elsewhere. We know that it's a very sensitive subject. Some of the subjects might be sensitive. And so we're going to work together with the public schools to figure out what we can offer the students in conjunction with our presentation. So that way, if they do feel that one of the subjects really hits home for them, or they really just need help with something, they're experiencing something at home, some type of peer pressure, we want to be able to offer them services as well, and not just educate them, but really make it a full process for them as they learn the different things that we're going to present to them. So getting into the curriculum itself. So we will start with an initial breakfast club style type meeting. That's going to be the meeting where we meet with the students, get the feedback. Going into week 1, we will have our entire investigative unit there, which is made up of 3 investigators. It will be myself and Mary. We will all go in and talk to the students about what the district attorney's office does, what exactly the district attorney is in the criminal justice system, and just give them an open communication with her to, put a name to a face. I'm sure at the high school level, they're not too sure what a district attorney is or what the district attorney does. And I think it's important for them to understand where she is involved and how her office is involved in the criminal justice system. So it'll open up as an introduction for her. And then we will also do a trust building exercise with the students, get to know them a little bit better. If anyone in this room remembers Heads Up 7-Up, we're planning to play a version of that with the students to really just get feedback on what they've experienced, what they're seeing at school, what type of peer pressure they've experienced, if they're aware of any gun violence, if they've experienced any gun violence, and just try to build some kind of rapport with them to where they begin to feel comfortable with us, and in hopes that they do open up to us and we're able to actually build a relationship with them over the course of the 8 weeks. Part of this curriculum, we have partnered with all of our local law enforcement agencies. At least one representative from each law enforcement agency will be sending us a guest speaker. So week 1 will be the introduction. Week 2, we're going to jump right into gangs, discussion on gangs. We're actually bringing in a guest speaker from the Violence Intervention Program from Albuquerque. He was an ex-gang member from Los Angeles, California. A convicted felon, and he actually turned his life around. He's been clean for 5 years, out of prison for 5 years, and he is actually employee of the city of Albuquerque, and his job is literally to go around and talk about violence intervention and why this isn't a lifestyle you would want to live. So we're going to bring him in. He will be talking about his experience with gang violence. And then week 3, we will be having a detective with the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office, Roy Arndt, coming in to talk about sex crimes and social media. I believe he's been a detective for at least 5 years now. And so he will be talking to kids about social media and, the type of crimes that occur on social media, bullying, sending illicit pictures, things like that, just educating the students on what's a crime and what's not. Week 4, we do have gun violence. So in that section, we will be having a representative from the New Mexico State Police talking about the See Something, Say Something movement, talking about how to interact with law enforcement if they do find out that there is going to be some kind of gun violence on campus, or they become aware that a student is planning to bring a weapon or some kind of violence to school, and just educating them that, you're not going to get in trouble for talking about it or telling somebody that something could occur. Week 5, I believe, is drugs and alcohol. In that section, we have another guest speaker from the Violence Intervention Program here in Albuquerque. Her name is Renee Chavez Mays. She is a recovering addict. She served a total of 23 years at the Grants Women's Correctional Facility, and she has been clean for 5 years as well, out of prison, and she now is an employee with the city of Albuquerque, and she also talks about her life in drugs and how it affected her life, how she spent most of her life incarcerated because she chose drugs. We wanted to really bring in these guest speakers that would appeal to students and really give them a real life experience. I think it's one thing if we get in there and we put up a PowerPoint, where does that go and how do the students really take to that? So we wanted to make something really appealing to them as far as catching their attention. And that's why we chose to go with guest speakers in the expertise of each subject. Week 7 is the domestic violence portion of that. We actually have a victim advocate who works for the district attorney's office in Santa Fe with us. She is now an advocate for women who have been victims of domestic violence, and she was actually a victim herself. She now shares her story and talks about what it was like. And we talked to her, and she has a very unique story. And I think it will be very helpful for the students because her relationship with domestic violence started when she was 18 years old. So I think it's going to be something that the students can really relate to, or at least understand that, what domestic violence is and what it looks like, and not, a typical, mom and dad relationship, but it can also occur amongst family members within the house or at a younger age. And then we will also have in the next week, traffic crash and DWI. And that is going to be taught by, I believe it's either going to be internal or the Santa Fe Police Department. They're going to be presenting on that. And that again is just talking about, passenger safety, responsibility of the driver when they have passengers in the vehicle, understanding DUI, that it's not just alcohol now, talking about, driving under the influence of different types of drugs. And then week 8, we will have graduation. We want to make this something worthwhile for the kids. We want to make them feel like they really accomplished something by learning these things. And we're asking the public schools to actually do a graded essay in between week 7 and week 8, a reflective essay where the students will talk about whatever they learned over the course of the 8 weeks to really give us feedback on what they learned and what they felt was useful. And District Attorney Mary Carmack Altuis will be there. She will be presenting their certificates. And we're also asking on week 8 that all of our presenters attend and give some kind of word of encouragement to each student, just kind of wrapping up what we went over the course of the 8 weeks. At the end of each session, we will be giving a 15-minute question and answer and just letting students talk to us and just give us their feedback on whatever questions they have in regards to these real life subjects. That's the curriculum. I'm sure there's questions. If there's specific questions, we'll open it up for that.
Mr.
Just have a
Purdue, did you
couple-
want to? Yeah.
Sorry, Madam President, I just have a couple of things to add.
Please.
So when we thought of this project, I mean, ultimately, you know, as most of us grew up, we knew either GREAT or the DARE program that was involved in the schools. So, you know, it was our idea. I used to work at Santa Fe High School. We're both products of Santa Fe Public Schools, currently working as a coach within the schools. And we see in my time in law enforcement that there hasn't been a lot of mentorship or anything. So this was kind of our idea to bring forward that. I like to kind of look at it as like a wheel, if I can say that, where how do we impact our youth? And the idea behind this program is if we can circle them around with outreach, and then us as well as our law enforcement partners are being proactive with intervention and enforcement. By us working together, we provide support, and then you know, all of us coming together as a community, we provide that assistance for these kids. That's kind of our overall goal for this program, and how it would kind of look. And when we did meet with Principal Garcia from Santa Fe High, you know, we talked about some other ideas. She had some good ideas about potentially expanding the program as it goes forward, to eventually maybe include parenting, and then maybe finding a way to target, you know, our youth that are having a little bit more trouble in schools, or, you know, are often being suspended or anything like that. How can we help them, you know, in even greater need? So, you know, it has a lot of potential, and our hopes is that we can have a big impact on the youth.
Thank you. Dr. Gonzalez.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Chavez, thank you very much for that presentation. I'm excited to see that. What I wonder about, are they going to culminate, they're going to have a graduation, but are they going to be producing anything or writing anything about what they've experienced? Or is it just people going to be talking to them?
So we're hoping that we build some kind of rapport over the 8 weeks to where they want us to stick around, or they want to share a story, or they want to open up about a personal experience. We know that the first couple of weeks will probably be a little iffy. We know we're going to have to get to build trust with them. One of the things that we had asked of all of our law enforcement agencies, we asked that when they come in to do their presentations that they do not wear uniform. We don't want it to be a place they feel like they can't open up or they can't share their experiences because they're scared that law enforcement is there and they might get in trouble. So we're just hoping that they can do some, you know, peer-to-peer interaction, or we hope that they share the information that they learn from us. The only thing that we were really asking for was a reflective essay at the end to really find out what they learned and if they found it beneficial. Ideally, we would like to just pilot it this last 8 weeks of school, and over the summer get the feedback from the teachers and some of the students, and really try to figure out how we can make this a course that gets implemented year after year if it is successful and if the kids think that it's something they need.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Anderson.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Francesca and Billy and DA. I really appreciate it. In full disclosure, I have worked with these folks. The district attorney's office was a recent client, and I'm really excited about what the district attorney's office does. I wanted to ask, a lot of this material sounds very heavy, and I know that a lot of the folks who we have who are dealing with, you know, behavioral challenges or challenges with the law are often products of or survivors, I should say, of trauma themselves. Are you going to be utilizing any trauma-informed practices in the curriculum or in the outreach?
Go ahead, Billy.
So yes, ma'am. So we have talked about that. Our goal is to possibly partner with student wellness as well. If there's some kind of peer-to-peer group that we could, you know, engage into this. Really, the idea behind the program is more educational based. So not so much getting into a lot of detail of these subjects, but more so just kind of giving them information on how things look or how it kind of plays out in the system. versus, targeting and going in depth into a certain category.
Much. I appreciate it, Mr. Purdue. And Board President Noble, members of the board, Superintendent. My second question was going to be if this had been coordinated with the Office of Student Wellness, because I know a lot of what they does really supports this work. So Brian and Jen Jefferson have done some really incredible work in intervention, and so that was my next question. And I had one more, but I can't think of it. So if anyone else has more questions, I'll try to think of it before time runs out. But thank you all so much.
And just to add one more, Board Member Anderson, we're kind of learning as we're going. So as we've met with administrators within the schools and Miss Ibarra, we've learned that there's those different sources that we can apply to the program. So as much involvement that we can get from Santa Fe Public Schools and anything else within the community, we'll definitely engage them in the program.
Board President, thank you so much. I remembered my question, which is amazing. So I am going to pat myself on the back for that. But my next question was how students will be identified who will participate in the program.
So we have left that up to the schools. When we had initially gone in, we picked teenaged students specifically. We had gotten some feedback that they wanted us to do this at a younger age, but we felt that this was the age group that really needed involvement and engagement and a presence on campus, so that way we could be there for them if they needed anything available. And we obviously know that it is something that we probably have to intervene with at a younger age, but right now we just wanted to address the group that is in need the most. And so we hope that we can extend at some point, but as of right now, we're limited on the people we have involved right now. And we hope that as this progresses, we can add increase the number of presenters on each subject to where we can have multiple courses running through Santa Fe High and through Capital. And DA Mary Carmack Altuis has a very big goal to make this district wide, which would include Espanola, Powaka, and Los Alamos. And so we're just piloting it right now within Santa Fe, but hopefully we'll be able to extend it. And as of right now, my understanding is Capital wants to address their freshman class specifically. And Santa Fe High was in between either their seniors or their sophomores, or finding a classroom where we would be presenting in that would touch just an entire freshman, sophomore, junior, senior class.
Keep going, Board Member Anderson.
Sorry, I think this is my last one. Apologies. Thank you, Board President Noble.
No worries. Good questions.
Are there any really great programs, evidence-based, that have really worked in other places that you guys might have based this on, or kind of looked at, or talked about that we might be able to look at as well?
So I'll go ahead and take that one, Member Anderson and President Noble. So we've done some research with the Department of Justice and their juvenile justice programs that they have. And a lot of it is all kind of, without getting into too many details of a specific subject, it kind of just touches on more of the education based. What is texting while driving, and what are some of the repercussions of something like that, so that we can get into those details. And just to add a little bit more to kind of the groups that we're targeting, our goal is to kind of hit the same students for that 8 weeks so that they can get this education. And then our hopes is that from peer-to-peer interaction, our information will be shared amongst their peers, and hopefully that message will just kind of spread out. But yeah, there is some other information, sorry to answer your question and go off on that second part. There is some information from DOJ that we can get that specifically talks about the juvenile programs.
Thank you, Board President Noble. I am done. Thank you.
Thank you. Secretary Boze.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. This is a really interesting conversation and presentation, and I wanted to say thank you to the DA's office for being kind of an innovative partner with us. And I think, both at our last meeting and this meeting, we're hearing more about people in our community doing mentorships. And I think that that's a really cool thing. And hopefully one of the distinctive things here about this program is that it's kind of dreamed up in our community and run by people in our community. And I think, that makes a really, hopefully a big difference versus kind of a national program that's a cookie cutter kind of thing. And so my hope is that by having people that are in our community talking to kids in our community, that we are forming those important special bonds to really, like you said, survey them and see what they need and kind of address that and make sure that they know that there are more adults that they can trust and turn to at times of need, because it certainly is something we're seeing right now. So thank you very much for the partnership and the innovation.
Deputy Superintendent Romero.
Thank you, President Noble, members of the board, Superintendent Chavez. I thank you guys for this presentation and collaboration. And I thank you for the thoughtfulness and the work in working with our Executive Director of Student Wellness. We do have some great resources for trauma, and just making sure that we are collaborating and we provide those supports for students will be super critical. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Madam President,
Vice President Garcia.
board members, Ms. DA, thank you for bringing this forward. Very well needed in our community, especially on that side of town. There's stuff there that people don't realize that happens there, but I would like to meet with you and your staff and just talk a little bit more some of the stuff that I'd be willing to help out. But thank you so much for bringing this. It makes me happy, sad, because it's well needed in that area of town. But thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Vice President Garcia. Any other questions, comments? Final thoughts from the DA and team? Yes, Mr. Perdue, go ahead.
President Noble, just want to add one thing. Just so you guys know as well, we definitely do look at this from a trauma-informed perspective. And one of the big things, I'm a domestic violence instructor, and I'm also trained in trauma-informed interviewing. So that's something that we definitely looked at and wanted to include in this presentation, so that we can maybe pick up on those key things with those students that may need that extra attention. So it's definitely something on our radar.
Thank you very much. Anything else, Madam DA? Do you want the final word? It looks like you're on a different device now. Oh no,
yeah, it's a whole different.
That's kind of fun.
Sorry. I just want to say thank you to the board, and I really appreciate the chance to speak with you and your wonderful questions, and I think they gave us a couple of other things to think about, and so I really look forward to getting this project going. So thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you for bringing it to us, and thank you, Ms. Perdue, Mr. Perdue, Dynamic Perduo. Is that what we say? Anyway, really appreciate you all coming and talking with us, and thank you, Ms. Ibata, for bringing them here. We will go ahead and move on our agenda. Now we have arrived at our action items, starting with our consent agenda. And I do want to, just as a point of privilege for a moment, say a couple things about the items on our consent agenda, because most people aren't reading the details of this and what the board does, but I often find and we probably have a slightly extra large audience tonight because everybody's curious about mask mandates. But I find these really instructive as to some of the breadth of day-to-day operations of the district. And I just want to point out that there's an increased budget adjustment for air quality, a third round of payments of ESSER stimulus funding on air quality for over $100,000. Let's see. Something else I thought on that, just STEM professional development. Here's the big one. Well, there's extended learning transportation, all these things that are really important. But also I did want to flag that we are getting a significant SEG increase and we all received an email from the superintendent with that update. So we are getting some funding into our current fiscal year budget, which I'm sure the superintendent has roughly already spent or filled holes with, or all the things, but it is often good news when we get an increase in the SEG, or equalization guarantee, the formula that funds our schools most broadly. I also wanted to just highlight in our contracts list that we are doing a solar carport at Milagro for just around $250,000, a grid-tied photovoltaic carport at Milagro Middle School. It's always wonderful to see more renewable energy generation coming into the district. So, and if you want, if anybody wants to dig in out there, we do have interesting things in our budget adjustments and the contracts over 60,000, and not to mention the minutes of the board meeting are always fascinating reading, I'm sure. Things that are on our consent agenda. Okay, I've had my moment. Thank you for your patience. Does anyone have any questions or want to consider anything separately on the consent agenda? And if not, is there a motion?
Madam Sorry. Madam President, I just wanted to note with the Milagro carport from our CRC meeting, I believe that Lisa Randall said that that brings Milagro to 75% powered by renewable energy.
Oh, that's cool. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll let Dr. Gonzalez make the motion.
I move approval of the consent agenda.
I will second.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. Second by Secretary Bozay. Any further discussion on the consent agenda? We'll go ahead and do a roll call vote. Vice President Garcia.
Yes.
Secretary Bozay.
Yes.
Dr. Gonzalez.
Yes.
Board Member Anderson.
Yes.
And the president also votes yes. Thank you very much. We have approved the consent agenda. Moving along on our action items, we arrive at item B, our 2017 general obligation bond reconciliation. Superintendent.
Thank you, Board President Noble, members of the board. With us tonight, we have Executive Director of Operations, Mr. Gabriel Merrill, but we also have a CRC or Community Review Committee member, Mr. Dax Contreras. And also Deputy Superintendent Christy Wagner. There you are. Didn't see you on. Is Dax on?
Yeah, I'm right here.
All right. Dax, would you like to take us through the GEO bond?
Yeah, so the CRC got together and we were looking at the reconciliation that was presented to us. Long story short, we had some concerns about transferring the money initially because we were not sure that the projects that we were taking money from were actually completed. And so before we moved money to the general reconciliation fund, we wanted to make sure that those budgets and the corresponding projects were finished. So in our last meeting, we discussed and we made sure we talked to people that were on the ground affiliated with the projects. And yes, those projects have been completed to satisfaction. And so we went ahead and unanimously voted to approve the transfer of the funding from those 3 projects into the reconciliation fund, and then transferring some of that money into some projects that were short of funding.
Thank you very much. Mr. Romero, did you want to add something?
Certainly, there's a thank you so much, community member Dax Contreras, for explaining that to the board. There was a short presentation. We don't need to go into the unless you'd like to, but it does show the transfer of funds and from projects that came in under budget, which we were very satisfied with, and also some reconciliation. That's a it's a regular process that we need to go through in order to start closing out our 2017 general obligation bond. I think someone's bringing up the presentation now, which has a really good illustration of what we're asking the board to consider and recommending to the board so that we can get our funds in order in preparation to close out the 2017 general obligation bond and prepare ourselves for moving into the 2021 general obligation bond. So if we could go to that third slide, I think I can just walk through that real quickly. Here we are. Those are the projects under step 1 that came in under budget. And you see that in the current contingency column, we have about $500,000. And once we move in step 1, move those under budget projects into contingency, then we'll have about $1.635 million. The second step of that would be to go ahead and close out or balance out the projects in step 2 that came in over budget, which would, let me see if I can see the thing here, which will reduce our contingency to about $1.087 million. Keep in mind that contingency is really important. It allows us flexibility to be able to respond to current changing construction pricing. So that'll be helpful. And we'll, as with the asterisk, you can see that we'll be recommending the use of the remaining contingency that we'll bring back to the CRC at a future meeting so we can address other projects that are still left on the 2017 GO bond that are even part of the 2021 GO bond. So that'll allow us good flexibility. Thank you.
Madam President, I have a questions.
Go ahead, Vice President Garcia.
Thank you, Madam President, board members. Thank you for the presentation. So the 1.6, those projects will be done, correct? We're transferring money for those, like, can somebody bring up the list? Capital High School and that stuff, those projects will be done?
Yeah, if we could go back to the little spreadsheet, please.
So they're at shortfalls right now, right? So we're moving money to cover the shortfalls?
President Noble, Vice President Garcia, and board members. The first under step 1, those projects came in under budget. By that amount, I think it's about $1.1 million in savings for those projects. On step 2, those projects you see came in over budget, about $555,000, I think it is.
So I guess the concern, the question I have is, so all these projects here on the left, middle school at Yano, Aspen, are they going to get completed?
Sure, they, Vice President Garcia and board members, they have been completed for some time, all these projects. We're just reconciling those balances and trying to move those funds into contingency so we can address other projects at a later time.
So, thank you, Madam President. So how much contingency are we going to have for the 2017 bond left?
That is the far right column at the very bottom. It'll be 1.087 million.
And so what is your plan to spend that 1.87 million?
Vice President Garcia and board members and President Noble, we have several projects that are part of the 2017 GO bond. For instance, we have the Mandela project that had about $4.7 million allocated to it. We also had ECO And those projects may need a little bit of help as we move forward, especially with the volatile pricing for construction. And then there's some smaller projects that we have under facility renewal that we could use that contingency money for too.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Mr. Romero.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Garcia.
Madam
So,
President?
yes, go
Oh.
ahead, Secretary Bozay.
I'm sorry, I was just going to make a motion that we reconcile this for the recommendation.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the reconciliation in a second. And I was just going to say, it's pretty clear we had way more in the under budget category than in the over budget category. Correct? I mean, yeah, I know
Yes.
it's correct. I can read the numbers. And I think that is an achievement. We're increasing our contingency, which seems like a really good thing at the time. I think we heard in Secretary Bozay's comments of the board updates and follow-up from the CRC about the changing conditions and prices right now, particularly in construction, which is of course what general obligation funding is about. And I don't envy, but I do appreciate the job that Deputy Superintendent Wagner and Mr. Romero and everybody on their team has to do in doing these projects. And it's good to see how much under budget we were, how we have increased that contingency and are in a good place to address the probably increasingly volatile conditions of the market that we're seeing there. And Mr. Contreras, I really appreciate your context. I think it's always great to understand what happens at the CRC and what you all wrestle with and the concerns that are there. And then obviously the recommendations as they come to the board shaped by that committee. So thank you for being here tonight and thank you for your work on the CRC, and please share our thanks with the other members of the CRC if you would.
Thank you, Madam President. If I can real quick, I just want to reiterate to alleviate Board Member Garcia's concerns. You know, we were uncertain where those projects were completed, why there was leftover money. And so before we went ahead and actually voted and, you know, supported this motion of reconciliation, we did talk to those people on the ground and they were happy with the project. So we felt comfortable with the transfer.
Board President Noble.
Board Member Anderson.
If I could just follow up on Mr. Contreras's note in that meeting, they were not only completed, but the satisfaction that was in the principal's recollections was, or what am I trying to say? And what they told us was really incredible. They and what I think was particularly incredible about it was to see that the facilities that Deputy Superintendent Wagner and her team and Mr. Romero's team work on are not just buildings, they are places for people. They are places that people use. They are places that our children use. They really enhance the educational experience and the teaching and learning experience of both the students and teachers and all the folks, the community who use those facilities. So I really appreciate that we were able to hear that directly from the source.
Wonderful, thank you. Sounds like the committee really did its work. And again, good luck, Deputy Superintendent, Mr. Romero, and everybody on your team. Oh boy, it could get interesting, I suppose, over the next year and beyond. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the approval of the 2017 GO bond reconciliation?
Madam President, I'd just like to thank Christy. Christy, you've been through this for many years and you and your team do an excellent job. And that's one of the reasons why our taxpayers actually and the voters vote for our bonds, because we're showing them where the money's getting spent. Thank you. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Okay, we'll do a roll call vote on, again, approval of the 2017 GO bond reconciliation. Vice President Garcia,
Yes.
Secretary Bozay,
Yes.
Dr. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
and the President also votes yes. Thank you all very much. Again, thank you, Mr. Contreras, for being our guest speaker tonight.
Thank you.
Moving on to action item C, our 2021-2022-07 resolution determining the necessity for entering into a lease purchase agreement and notes to acquire education technology equipment. You know, it's got to be about bonds, not just because Mr. Melendres and Mr. Harrigan are here, because it's that jargony. There we are. Superintendent, are you going to kick this one off?
Yes, thank you, Board President Noble, members of the board. With us tonight, as you mentioned, Mr. Eric Harrigan, Managing Director from RBC Capital, and Bond Counsel, Mr. Art Melendres from Madrell Sperling Law Firm. Mr. Harrigan.
Thank you. Well, Madam President, members of the board, and Superintendent Eric Harrigan with RBC Capital Markets. At the last board meeting, the board adopted and approved the issuance of the general obligation bonds. This is the second part of the plan of finance. This authorizes the issuance of voter authorized education technology notes. In 2019, voters authorized 55 million of geo-education technology notes. This will be the fourth issuance of those voter authorized bonds. The issuance of these bonds will continue to maintain the district's historical education technology note rate of $1.50. And with that, I would be happy to turn it over to Art Melendres or answer any questions about the market or about the financing in general.
Thank you, Mr. Harrigan. Mr. Melendres, do you want to pick up?
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent. Yes, so we are in the necessity phase. And the statute we operate under requires the board in its initial discussion of this financing to officially determine that there is a necessity to acquire educational technology equipment. I think, just a little segue here, when this law was initially passed, education technology was a bit more of a luxury than it is in this time of pandemic, where it's not a luxury, it is really and truly a necessity. And you are to be congratulated that you've been forward thinking and explained to the voters how important having technology for the students and the staff in place is. So you have voter approval. And so I just want to leap forward. In a couple of weeks, actually on March 10th, is the second step in this process, which is to determine the sale of these notes, the interest rate that will be set by virtue of having an underwriter go into the marketplace and determine the exact interest rate and the cost that will be borne by the district over the next 3 years. There's only one other thing that I would like to point out very briefly. We have looked carefully at the fine work of your technology staff. Mr. Weaver and his staff have given me a list of purchases, proposed purchases to acquire technology equipment. So in simple terms, for me not being a technology completely good person, I want to say that a lot of the equipment that will be purchased is like hardware, or the computers, the computer refresh with software for the students. Some of the purchases that are going to be made are like licenses. So the computers have, depending on wear and tear, a useful life of between 3 to 5 years, and they are refreshed. licenses to operate those computers usually have a 1-year lifespan. So you renew the operating license annually. The point I want to make is under federal tax law, a capital improvement is permissible for tax exempt issuances of these notes. So we have had to break down the list of equipment, and we are showing that about 7 to 8 million of the purchases are going to be designated as capital improvement, meaning they have a useful life of more than 1 year. We have some money that will be in the category of 1 year. And so that distinction is important because these notes will be issued in 2 categories: tax exempt, which is the 7 to 8 million, and the smaller amount, which is the consumed in 1 year, would be taxable to comply with federal law. So with that explanation, the resolution itself basically says we need this equipment. We're going to have a meeting on March 10th. We ask our lawyers and staff to put notice in the newspaper so our general public knows this is when the meeting will be. Please come and speak up in any way you want about this project. And with that, I would certainly stand for any questions, and I would also refer this back to the superintendent at appropriate time for his recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Melendres. And as he mentioned, that we have to call a meeting on March 10th. It's a special meeting because that's part of the requirements to issue these notes. Correct. I also appreciate your context as it was, and I was going to say that is that once upon a time, this was innovative and forward-looking. Now it's still innovative and forward-looking, but really it's become a necessity. It's become bread and butter in education to have good equipment and work on that. And, you know, I don't think we can say enough times how much the fact that we had this ETN in place made the Santa Fe Public Schools able to pivot well when we had to go to remote learning, and we were able to pretty much overnight get a device into every student's hands. There were many districts where there was a lot of scarcity of devices, and we didn't have that. And the work of Dr. Weaver and his team up to, and then of course through the pandemic, to really bridge the digital divide and troubleshoot the technology in an ongoing way with students and families and teachers, I think it's just been extraordinary. And I know that we're still going, and we'll get more updates on the access that folks have and how we've been working on the digital divide and probably many, many other things. But this has just been an absolutely exceptional thing for the Santa Fe Public Schools, and appreciate all the work so many have done, including our bond folks and attorneys and all of that, to make sure that we get this right and cross every T, dot every I, and do this right and carefully. Superintendent, did you want to comment?
Yeah, I just want to comment on what you just said. Because of the technology that we have at our hand, we were able to call a remote snow day today for our secondary students. So just kind of piggybacking off of what we're able to do, how we can make a pivot, we were able to do that today due to the snow. So really does come in handy.
Yes, the notice said synchronous remote learning, which was great to see.
Madam President.
Vice President Garcia.
Very well said to the entire district. We were finance director, Robert Martinez, everybody that works on this stuff that are kind of behind the scenes, but very well said. But with that, I'd like to make a motion for approval.
I will second.
Thank you, Vice President Garcia and Secretary Bozay. Any other questions, comments, needed context? All right, we'll go ahead and do a roll call vote on approval of the resolution determining the necessity for entering into a lease purchase agreement and notes to acquire education technology equipment. Vice President Garcia.
Yes, and Madam Secretary, get ready to sign a lot of documents.
Secretary Bozay,
Yes.
Dr. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
and the president also votes yes. Mr. Harrigan, Mr. Melendres, thank you very much. Dr. Weaver, thank you. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Good to see you all. Okay, moving swiftly along to action item D, first reading of amended policy 250, employee childcare. Superintendent.
Thank you, Board President Noble. Members of the board, with us tonight is our legal counsel, Mr. Josh Granata, to take us through the first reading.
Good evening, Madam President, board members, and before you tonight, we have a proposed amendment to Board Policy 250. Board Policy 250 was passed pretty much during the beginning part of the pandemic, prior to vaccines, which would end. This policy allowed for the board, for the school district to create an emergency employee childcare. And just with the way that the pandemic kind of bounced us around from, in school one day and out of school the next, and here we are, 2 years later. In any event, we're asking that this policy be slightly amended. This policy expired by its own terms on December of 2020. And what we're asking is to amend the policy to allow the district to look into the options of providing childcare within the district. Obviously, it would be a great tool to retain teachers and provide for some extra benefit for working in the Santa Fe Public Schools. And so there's some slight amendments to the policy, and we ask that the board do approve this amendment to the Board Policy 250.
Thank you, Mr. Granata. Questions from the board?
I have a question, Madam President.
Go ahead, Vice President Garcia.
So if it expired in 2020, how come it's just coming forward to us now?
Madam President, Vice President Garcia, the reason that it's coming to you now is because, essentially, we didn't really need to use the emergency employee childcare at the time. The impetus behind it initially was to provide for childcare when we were in remote learning altogether. And as you recall, there are a number of people in our community who have to go to work, first responders, teachers even. And so the PED and the state allowed for schools to have an emergency policy and provide for childcare. It expired because we didn't really need it. We got back into school after the policy expired, and COVID was receding tremendously when school started. Unfortunately, it went back up quite significantly with the various variants. And so basically at the end of the day, what we're asking is that we look back at this policy and just amend it so that the district can look into the opportunity of providing childcare. We believe that it was an important piece of, being able to provide for the community during the pandemic and going forward. We believe it's still something that is needed within the community.
Thank you, Mr. Granata. Madam President, move for approval.
Thank you, Vice President. Thank you, Secretary Bozay. Vice President Garcia with the motion. The other thing to add is that looking into the childcare issue was a part of the staffing crisis resolution that the board passed reasonably recently, whenever that was, November, October, sometime way back in 2021. Okay, any further questions, discussion on this? We'll do a roll call vote. Vice President Garcia,
Yes.
Secretary Bozay,
Yes.
Dr. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
and the president also votes yes. Thank you very
Thank
much, Mr. Granada. Okay, we are now on board discussion and possible action, Roman numeral 9. And we start with item A, fiscal year 2021-22 board committee appointment to audit. Vice President Garcia, is this yours? I think we have this on there until we get someone.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I just had some communication issues with the gentleman that is going to sit on there. His name's Sam Montoya. So I will get that to Elma.
Okay, are you prepared to nominate him? Because we vote on these things.
Not
or
just
you-
yet, actually,
okay.
not just yet. So we can just table it, I guess.
Yeah.
Thank
Well, we'll just move on unless you want to formally table it and just because that's what we've been doing. If there is an action to be taken on these, and then we will bring it back once you have solved communication issues and are ready to move the nomination forward.
Thank you.
Okay, item B, 2022 Excellence in Student Achievement Award Criteria, Timeline, and Nomination Form. I'm going to need help on this, Superintendent, but this is something that the board does every year. It always comes quickly, and we need to, in essence, select a student for this nomination, I think, to take action by our next meeting. But Superintendent, if you'd fill in the details.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Board President Noble, and members of the board. Again, this is the 2022 New Mexico School Board Association Student Achievement Awards. And again, on the 11th is the deadline of March. And so we would submit our names that we would like to see recipients of this award. Now, recipients may include board members, administrators, teachers, staff members, parents, community members, or even volunteers. So kind of keep that in mind. It's really about impacting a student's life or many students in a positive way. Right now, it's one award per district. In the past, our practice has been if we had multiple awardees that the district would cover the $50 plaque that we would want to hand out. Awards are usually mailed to the districts on April 6th, and then we tend to have a presentation during the next board meeting. What we want to do is really award them in April or May once we can finalize and receive all the awards in case we have to order extras. And then we want to make sure that all nominations that come from not only you guys, but others are sent to Ms. Alma Behar. And we'll put that email address out there for anybody who wants to make a nomination. In early March, the board does come together, and I think in the past it was President Noble and Secretary Bozay, if I remember correctly, to review the nominations and then select the award winners. So that's kind of the timeline. We'll continue to solicit nominees and then create a list. When you nominate somebody, please provide a description. Sometimes we do receive a name without a description, and we have to reach back out to those individuals to ask why this individual was nominated.
And as I recall, you're correct, Secretary Bozay and I did go through this big spreadsheet that included the aggregation with information from the nominations and then some layers of looking at it for lots of things from the team. So I would love to suggest that happens again. I don't know, Secretary Bozay, if you cast your mind back, if you had any upgrades on the process. It's hard, as I recall, because there are so many deserving people. I'm guessing during the pandemic, there's even more. And I think if anything, for the board, I don't know if we have any numbers as to what we've done before, but the question is, we want what we've done in the past is expanded the number. So we have more than one. Each additional one is $50, which does add up, not terribly quickly. But there's also this sort of course, keeping these as meaningful in that we don't give out hundreds and hundreds of them. That would also be expensive. So I think in the past, the board has provided a range or even a target number of nominations. Maybe we can figure out how many we've done before, and we can see if 2 board members would be willing to be that small committee to wrestle with the nominations and bring forward recommendations for action at our next meeting. And Secretary Boze, I don't know if you want to offer anything of your reflections on that. You remember?
Madam President, I don't have anything to add. I think we were aiming to keep it around 10 to 12. That's the number that I was remembering from last spring. While also, making sure we took care of all the COVID heroes during that difficult year.
Board Member Anderson.
Thank you, Board President Noble. So I just wanted to be clear, where do we nominate folks, or are the nominations coming from other folks outside of the board or just from the board?
So we've been sort of organic about it. Some of the best nominations, as I recall, came from principals who really have a great lens on staff members who have gone above and beyond. I believe it was, I don't know what he was then, but Vice President Garcia who brought forward a nomination for Board Member Price at the time for her long service. And that was a while ago. And I think I don't remember how that went with the public nomination process of it all, but I do remember that Board Member Price was enormously flattered and honored to get that nomination and that award. So we can certainly do it, but often I think the nominations, as the superintendent, I think said he's going to open it up fairly widely, and then we'll get them. They've also come from members of the district team. Those are often very good nominations, or even just, I think, people with their colleagues.
Excellent, thank you.
So just to give some definition to it, I'd suggest a range of, I remember the way Secretary Boze does, but 10 to 14 would be the numbers I'd suggest that we think about. And if anybody's willing to be a part of a committee of 2, given what I'm facing in the next couple of weeks, I would prefer not to be on that. So I want to step back from this one and hope others will step forward to wrestle with this topic. And again, it's really inspiring to read what these folks do that get nominated.
And we could bring the small committee back early March once we've really received a number of individuals to review. Just remember, March 11th is that deadline to submit the names.
Thank you. Board Member Anderson.
I would be happy to help.
Marvelous. Dr. Gonzalez.
I would also be happy to help, but it might be good if you said you don't want to do it, but if Sarah, somebody who's done it before, because neither Sasha nor I have done this before. So, and I don't know how complicated it is. If we probably could figure it out.
You can figure it out. The complicated part is making, judgment calls as to who gets it over somebody else, because there will be more nominations than we can award. And yeah. Okay, does that seem like an agreement? So we have Dr. Gonzalez and Board Member Anderson. Superintendent, I'm sure there are folks who worked on it last year. And, maybe that process worked in terms of the sort of recommendations and different lenses that were there in the spreadsheet. But I'm sure that the board members would appreciate whatever you all want to put together to help them sort through and make some decisions and bring a great portfolio of awardees to us before March 11th. So I guess at that March 10th meeting.
Exactly.
Dr. Gonzalez.
I'm confused. I thought the deadline for it was March 11th. And so how would we have the?
Well, the deadline's March 11th. I think the hope is that because the board would, I suppose we could just designate it. In the past, we've sort of adopted the nominees and acted as a board. And I was just saying the March 10th is the board meeting right before the deadline. Okay, we good on that? Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez, Board Member Anderson, for stepping forward. Finally, we have advanced planning. Superintendent, do we need any changes there?
No, we list a special board meeting followed with a study session. So on the 10th, March 10th.
And I want to say that I made a mistake in looking for not terribly expensive spring break flights, and we'll be traveling on the 10th. So I won't be able to attend that board meeting. And I do love voting on bonds. But Vice President Garcia, my hope would be that you can chair that meeting. And obviously when we know one board member is going to be out, the quorum necessities get closer. So I suggested to the superintendent that he just check in with everybody that week, but certainly I would say it's important if anybody else ends up with a reason not to attend that board meeting, to let the team know so that they can adjust as needed.
Madam
Dr.
President.
Gonzalez, oh, yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to note that there is no CRC meeting next week.
Great. So that one is the 23rd, no 23rd CRC meeting. Thank you. Dr. Gonzalez.
I don't know if you have, don't seem to have the Partners in Education meeting on these calendars. I know there's one next Tuesday. I think it's the 22nd. And I think I'm the only board member on that committee.
It's true. And I don't think we've ever had the Partners in Ed board meetings on this. I don't know if there's a reason for that or if you feel they should be on there, but
it's just a good reminder for me.
Right. Maybe you just double check with the Partners in Ed folks if there's any reason they don't want those listed. I mean, I think the point is, and maybe Superintendent, I'm just tired, but thinking on the fly, that is an outside of Santa Fe Public Schools meeting, whereas these are Santa Fe Public Schools committees and hosted meetings. The parameters of this calendar are meetings that require public notice. I think that's
Right.
my guess there.
You're correct, public notice.
Okay.
And Madam President, the March 10th, after we have the special board meeting, that study session, is that our wellness study session?
It is.
Okay, lovely. I look forward to good notice to the community so that they can participate and listen into that, because I know that I've received some concerned emails and I want people to know that we're looking at it and talking about it and this is a way that they can catch up on all that.
Okay, thank you. So we will have our next regular meeting on March 3rd. Is the CRC still on for March 9th at this point?
Yes, Madam President, it is.
Excellent. And then the special board meeting, which is, as the schedule would indicate, usually pretty quick to approve the GO bond and ETN sale, followed by the study session, which I think Secretary Bose's idea to get any information we can to let people know what'll be about that wellness study session. And if there are any particulars to the agenda, would be great there. Anything further on advanced planning? Anything else for the good of the order? All right, going once, going twice. We are adjourned. Thank you all very much. Have a good long weekend.
Yep. Enjoy. Have a good night.
Take care, everyone.